Some people feel hurt just because a message was ignored. A careless word can keep them up all night. A small act from someone else is enough to throw them off balance. And then they say life is unfair. People are terrible. Everything is against them. But what's the truth? They are not hurt because the world is too cruel. They are hurt because they've never learned to govern themselves. We spend too much time trying to change the world and far too little training the mind. We get angry, disappointed. We react too fast, forgetting that every emotion is a signal, not a command. In Stoic philosophy, emotional discipline is not numbness. It is freedom. A deep kind of freedom that comes from refusing to let anyone else define your mood or your worth. When you understand that peace doesn't come from everything going your way, but from standing firm when it doesn't, you begin to live differently. And that journey begins by observing yourself. 1. Emotional discipline, the shield of the strong. True strength doesn't reside in muscle, nor does it stem from an overwhelming presence or sharp words shouted in a crowd. Strength, through the lens of Stoic philosophy, is the ability to govern your inner world before it's manipulated by the outer one. It is the power to choose not to react, not because you feel nothing, but because you understand the cost of an unnecessary response. Some enter a room loud, aggressive, ready to argue with anyone who disagrees. Others walk in quietly, and yet the room shifts. A calm silence settles. They don't seek attention. They simply remain unmoved. It's not that they have no problems, but that they refuse to let the external disturb their core. Their calm is not passivity, but a quiet form of power, the power of someone who has learned to master himself. Most people live on the edge of reaction. Someone runs a red light and they snap. A careless comment leaves them spiraling. One negative post online and they toss and turn all night. And so, day after day, they become puppets, pulled by the strings of emotions triggered by what they cannot control. What they don't see is that each time they hand over the remote control of their being to someone else. Emotional discipline doesn't mean pretending not to feel. You will still get angry, still feel hurt, still be disappointed, but you don't act on impulse. You let the emotion pass like a wave. You learn to stand still, to observe it, to name it, and then decide whether it deserves the right to direct your actions. Like a ship captain who can't stop the storm, but can hold the wheel steady as the sea rages. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can be mighty if you stop letting what's outside steal your peace." He didn't say this out of coldness, but from experience. As an emperor amidst a chaotic empire, Marcus knew that real power wasn't in the crown, but in remaining lucid through the mess. Imagine a familiar scene. You're standing in line at the checkout, exhausted after a long day. Someone cuts in front of you. Your blood rises. A response sits on the tip of your tongue. But then you breathe slowly and think, I could say something, but is this worth my energy? You choose silence. Not because you are weak, but because you refuse to be pulled into another person's power game. In that moment, you are not the loser. You are the master. We live in a world that praises quick reactions, clapbacks, and owning others as signs of confidence. But fast isn't always wise. The loudest voice is often the most unstable. The one who insists on winning every argument is often too restless to walk away. The Stoic is different. They don't play to win. They live to understand themselves, and from that, they're free from needing to be right in the eyes of others. Self-control isn't something you gain in an afternoon. It's built through small choices, repeated daily. Each time you delay a reaction, you lay a brick in your mental fortress. Each time you say, "I feel angry, but I won't act on this anger," you place the first stone in the wall of inner freedom. And slowly, through intentional acts, you become a stronger version of yourself, one no longer conditioned by the environment, no longer needing to react just to feel alive. When you begin to see every situation as training in composure, you'll notice something. The people who once triggered you don't hold the same power anymore. You're not colder, just less breakable. You're not numb, just more aware of your ability to remain peaceful even as others lose theirs. The world is not short of challenges. Each day is a new emotional exam, but you don't need the world to soften for you to feel at peace. You only need to learn how to move with stillness inside a place no one can violate unless you let them. That is the shield of the strong, not a weapon to fight others, but a guard to keep yourself whole in a world that never stops changing. 2. Lower expectations increase freedom. It's not other people's actions that hurt you. It's what you believe they should have done but didn't. You expected your best friend to remember your birthday. You hoped your boss would praise your effort after a long project. You wanted your partner to understand what you left unsaid. And when they didn't, you didn't just feel disappointed, you felt dismissed, abandoned, betrayed. But look closer. Are you in pain because of their behavior or because of the story you told yourself about how they should have behaved? Every expectation is a silent contract you've written but they never signed. You assigned someone the role of making you happy and blamed them when they failed the part. You handed them the task of managing your emotional balance and grew upset when they didn't take it. But in truth, they never agreed to it. People are not tools to soothe your insecurity, and the world has no obligation to play out the script you imagined. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who lived like a student of life, once wrote, "Each morning, prepare to meet selfish, ungrateful, deceitful, and foolish people." He wasn't teaching pessimism. He was training you in a vital skill, the ability to see life as it is, not as you wish it to be. We often judge others through our own standards, forgetting they're shaped by a past we've never lived. They're not programmed to understand you. They weren't born to play supporting roles in your life's story. They act according to their own awareness, experiences, and limitations. When you expect them to think like you, behave like you, love the way you do, you're bending the world to fit your inner mold. That is a blueprint for endless disappointment. A friend doesn't reply, and you interpret it as they don't value this relationship. But maybe they're busy, drained, or simply not used to texting back quickly. A relative doesn't support you at the right time, and you assume they're envious, but maybe they're struggling in ways they haven't shared. If you don't step into their shoes, you let the gap between reality and expectation become the breeding ground for pain. That's why the more you expect, the more you get hurt. Not because others are bad, but because you hoped they'd be better than they are. You demanded sensitivity from someone who may have never learned empathy. You longed for care from someone who's never truly been cared for. You asked others to fill the holes you haven't filled yourself. A Stoic never blames the world for not meeting their expectations. They adjust their expectations to meet the real world, not the ideal one in their head. They don't condemn others for being imperfect. They accept that imperfection as part of the game. That's how they preserve emotional freedom, not by controlling others, but by refusing to be controlled by what they can't. Lowering expectations isn't becoming cold. It's becoming wise. It doesn't kill hope, it frees you from the prison of constant disappointment. When you stop demanding perfection from the world, you begin to welcome each interaction as it is an action, not a statement of your worth. Try something simple. Think of someone who often lets you down, a friend, a relative, a coworker. Now ask yourself, am I angry because they did something, or because I thought they should have and never said it out loud? That question may be a mirror, revealing an unseen shadow of expectation, and the moment you see it, you'll feel a quiet release. Instead of waiting for others to change, choose your response consciously. Choose not to react when it's unnecessary. Choose to accept rather than control. And above all, choose to protect your inner peace because no one else is responsible for that but you. Just as you can't command the storm to stop blowing, you can't demand people to always be kind and proper. But you can learn to wear armor on the inside by realizing, I may not control them, but I always control myself. And when you understand that expectations aren't obligations others must fulfill, but simply things you can choose to adjust, then you stop living in disappointment. You begin to live in freedom. The kind of freedom that comes from accepting people as they are, not as you wish them to be. 3. Don't react to every provocation. Not everyone who approaches you is looking for a conversation. Sometimes they're simply trying to ignite chaos. They don't want the truth, they want a reaction. They don't seek understanding, they want you to lose composure. And if you take the bait, you've lost not because they were right, but because you surrendered your self-mastery. Some words aren't spoken to communicate, but to strike at your weakness. A vague insult, a rude comment online, a question wrapped in sarcasm. You feel the agitation rise, the urge to strike back, to explain, to defend your pride. But the moment you react on impulse, you've lost control of the game. You've just given them what they wanted, disorder in your mind. Reaction isn't always resistance. Sometimes it's submission, because the wise don't walk onto a stage built by someone else just to play the role of the angry fool. They don't let others decide when they lose their temper. They choose silence not from weakness, but because their composure leaves the other person unsettled. Epictetus once taught, "It's not what others do that makes you suffer, but how you choose to view and respond to it." When someone insults you, offends you, or tries to bait you with words, you always have two choices: react and be pulled down, or remain still and let them fall short. That choice may seem small, but it reveals your deepest strength. Think back to the last time someone deliberately provoked you, a snide remark in a meeting, a confrontational stare, a disrespectful gesture. What did you feel first? Maybe a racing heart, a flushed face, words ready to launch. But if you had paused for just 3 seconds, you'd see something strange. The truth doesn't need your yelling to stand. Real honor doesn't demand constant defense. And your worth is not decided by someone else's lack of self-control. Those who react impulsively often lack inner boundaries. Anyone can walk in, drop a cutting word, and leave while you're left in a burning rage. But those with a strong interior are like a room with a locked door. You can knock, but without invitation, you don't enter. Provocation is not a test of logic, it's a test of dignity. It asks whether you need outside approval to feel valid. It asks whether a careless word can ruin your entire afternoon. And more than anything, it asks if you know when to walk away from a fight where winning only means exhaustion. Not everything that makes you want to react is worth sacrificing your peace for. Some things deserve clarification. Some deserve your voice. But not every insult deserves a response. Not every attacker deserves your wisdom or your energy. The Stoic does not choose silence out of fear of conflict. They choose it because they choose their battles. They know no one can react to everything and still remain clear-headed. They don't need revenge to feel powerful. They need calm to stay on course. Refusing to react doesn't mean accepting injustice. It means you control the timing, the words, and the degree of your response. You decide when to speak and when to walk away. You're the one at the wheel, not a puppet on someone else's string. And here's the beautiful part. You can practice this every day, when someone cuts in line, when you're interrupted mid-sentence, when you get a provocative email. In those moments, just remembering, I don't always have to react, lays the foundation for self-mastery. A person who needs to shout to be heard is someone losing internal stability. But a person who stays calm while others yell, that's the one the entire room will pause to watch. Let your silence be your loudest answer. Let your composure force the agitator to hear the echo of their own powerlessness. And let your decision not to react be proof that you no longer live to prove yourself, but to preserve your dignity. 4. Adversity is the gym of character. It's not success, but adversity that shows you who you really are. When everything goes smoothly, anyone can appear calm, kind, and gracious. But when plans collapse, when kindness is not returned, when effort is ignored, that's when your true self appears. And sadly, many people are not ready to meet that version of themselves. We often see adversity as an obstacle. But to the Stoic, adversity is opportunity. It is a mirror reflecting the parts of our character still unfinished. A test of the values we claim to live by. A door hard to open, but once crossed, leads us to a stronger version of ourselves. You don't know how patient you are until you wait in line for 40 minutes under the sun, with no apology. You don't know how humble you are until you're misunderstood and still choose not to defend yourself. And you don't know how mature you are until you stand before someone who once hurt you and your heart is calm. Frustration, fatigue, anger. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of training. Every emotion stirred in adversity is a weight for the muscle of character. You can lift it with awareness or drop it through reaction, but only one of those will carry you forward. Seneca once wrote, "A man who has not been tested never knows how strong he truly is." And that remains true today, in an age where we try to avoid discomfort at all costs. When things go wrong, we call it a red flag, toxic or unstable, instead of asking, what is this here to teach me? Here's a harsh truth. No one grows in their comfort zone. Souls don't get stronger by being pampered. They get stronger by being challenged, then rising again, one trial at a time. Like an oak that won't stand tall unless it's weathered heavy storms. Like stone that isn't sharp unless it's carved by running water. Adversity doesn't only come in grand crises. Sometimes it's a delay you didn't expect. A cold shoulder from someone you value. A harsh glance when you hoped for warmth. These small moments, seen through the lens of practice, are where your character is shaped. Marcus Aurelius viewed life as a battlefield of the inner world. He didn't ask life to be softer, he asked himself to be stronger. When betrayed, he didn't seek revenge, he sought dignity. When misunderstood, he didn't fix others, he refined himself. That's why, centuries later, he's still respected not because he was an emperor, but because he turned adversity into fuel for growth. So next time you're hurt, instead of asking, why me? Ask, what am I being trained in right now? Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's letting go. Maybe it's the ability to keep your kindness when no one returns it. Because no one builds inner strength on easy days. Easy days make you comfortable, not stronger. True growth is when you face anger without being ruled by it. When you're hurt, but don't turn pain into a weapon. When you feel injustice, but still choose to act with dignity. Every adversity is a mirror held up to you. The question is, Will you react like a wounded child or respond like a man refining his character? The Stoic doesn't run from adversity. He walks through it with awareness, with reason, with calm built from within. He doesn't let pain turn him into a victim. He uses it to transform into a silent warrior. And with each trial, he emerges not just stronger, but wiser. That's why adversity is no longer the enemy. It becomes the gym, a place with no audience, no spotlight, only you and your bare will. Each time you refuse to fall to chaos, you lift the weight of your character. And day by day, step by step, you become the kind of man adversity cannot shake because you've learned to use it to walk more aligned than ever before. 5. Observe your emotions like passing clouds. You are not your anger, nor your sadness, envy, or fear. You are the one experiencing them, not becoming them. There is a profound difference between the two, and recognizing that boundary is the first step toward no longer being ruled by emotion like a sleepwalker in a storm. Most people don't live with awareness. They live in reaction, a criticism, and they explode. A failure, and they collapse. A wound, and they shrink, shut down, braced to fight back. They don't realize they can pause. That between a rising emotion and the action that follows, there is always a space. And if they are mindful enough to live in that space, they are no longer victims of emotional waves. The Stoics called it the gap between stimulus and response. Within that space, you have the power to choose. Emotions may arrive like strong winds, but you are not obligated to drift with the wind. You can stand still, take a deep breath, observe it, and let it pass without being carried away. Imagine emotions as clouds. They appear, drift across the inner sky, change shape, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, sometimes stormy. But you are the sky, vast, deep, and never undone by a passing cloud. When you realize you are the observer, not the cloud, you enter a kind of freedom that most people never touch in their lifetime. We often think, I'm angry, means I have to shout. I'm hurt, means I must act cold. But no, emotions are not commands. They are signals. And like all signals, you can observe, analyze, understand, and then decide how to respond. A mature person isn't dragged around by emotions. They walk alongside them, understand them, but never hand them the wheel. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Our minds take the color of our thoughts." If you let anger shape your perception, the world becomes a hateful place. If you let fear lead, every opportunity looks like a threat. But if you simply observe those emotions, acknowledge them without immediate action, you reclaim your agency. You begin to live as the master of your life, not a servant to emotional chaos. Emotional observation is not avoidance. It's not escape nor denial. It is, in fact, the deepest form of presence. It's saying, I clearly see that I am angry. I clearly see that I am sad. But I will not let these emotions write the next chapter of my actions. You can practice this anywhere. When someone interrupts you, pause instead of cutting them off. When someone sighs with disdain, step back mentally instead of snapping. No need to pretend you feel nothing. Feel everything but respond like someone awake. In truth, the more you observe your emotions, the better you understand yourself. You'll recognize the root fears behind your overreactions, the old wounds that make you sensitive to things that should be harmless, and you'll realize many emotions you carry daily don't originate in the present, but from past memories that were never healed. Epictetus compared awareness to a city gatekeeper. Not everyone who knocks gets in. Not every emotion that arrives deserves to stay. And you, not anyone else, hold the key. When you act without reflection, you fling that gate wide open. But when you pause and choose, you protect your fortress from invaders named anger, arrogance, envy, insecurity. Each time you pause before reacting emotionally, you strengthen your inner power. Each time you choose observation over absorption, you inch closer to emotional maturity. No one asks you to be perfect, but you can improve each day not by controlling the world, but by understanding and guiding what's happening within. The sky never fears the clouds, and you don't need to fear your emotions either. You only need to learn to stand still within them, observe their movement, and hold your center like an unmoved marker in the heart of a storm. 6. Gratitude amid the unpleasant. Everyone feels grateful when things go well, when compliments come, when the weather's nice on the weekend. When plans go exactly as expected, it's easy to smile and say, "I'm grateful for this." But Stoic philosophy doesn't ask if you can be thankful on sunny days. It asks, can you still hold gratitude when the storm rolls in? The true challenge isn't in thanking the good. It lies in finding meaning within what feels unfair, irrational, or uncomfortable. When you've been betrayed, delayed, pushed aside, can you still be clear-minded enough to say, perhaps this is here to teach me something? Because if gratitude only exists when life is easy, then it's not a virtue. It's just a conditioned reflex. But if it remains when you are hurt, when life defies your plans, when no one comforts or even sees your effort, then it becomes a true strength. The Stoic doesn't use gratitude as a slogan. They use it as a practice, a lens to see clearly instead of complain, a method for turning adversity into lessons, a quiet reminder. No situation is meaningless, only minds not yet trained to find the meaning within it. Seneca once wrote, "We often blame circumstances, yet fail to see that it's those very circumstances that raise us." Gratitude, in his view, wasn't the denial of pain. It was the awareness to say, if today feels uncomfortable, perhaps I'm being stretched toward growth. Have you ever thanked a delay, a rejection, a breakup? Likely not because they weren't pleasant, but if you look from far enough away, you may see. Some things didn't go as you wished, but led you exactly where you needed to be. Some losses that once seemed to ruin you created the space for something deeper to grow. Gratitude doesn't come from blind optimism. It comes from conscious perception. It's when you're stuck in traffic, late for an appointment, and instead of punching the wheel in frustration, you exhale and ask, what is this moment training in me? Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's surrendering what you can't control. Maybe it's the skill of emotional regulation in unchangeable situations. Most people waste energy resisting reality. They wrestle with what already happened, rebel against what can't be undone. But the Stoic learns to redirect that energy. They don't ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, who will I become because of this? Because the truth is, no situation is entirely negative if you can extract something good from it. No day is fully wasted if it teaches you something. And no pain is fully meaningless if it deepens your strength, wisdom, or kindness. Gratitude amid the unpleasant is a noble rebellion. Not rebellion through anger, but through the dignity of choice. It says, I can't change this event, but I can choose not to let it damage my spirit. That is freedom, a freedom deeper than circumstance. You can practice this daily. When someone annoys you, ask what part of you still feels vulnerable. When a plan fails, ask if your flexibility can stretch a little more. When you spiral into negativity, pause and list just one thing you can be grateful for in that exact moment. Just one that's enough to shift from narrow frustration to a wider view. Because in the end, gratitude isn't just an attitude, it's a way to reconstruct your entire perception. It's how you stop fighting the present and begin living with it. It's the art of finding light in the darkest places, not because the light is obvious, but because your eyes have been trained to see it. And when you can be grateful even in the unpleasant, adversity no longer frightens you. You no longer wait for life to be perfect to feel whole. You'll know wherever you are, whether in loss, silence, or solitude, you still have one essential thing left: the power to choose how you see it. 7. Let time give you a wider perspective. When something has just happened, it always feels bigger than it really is. A small criticism can weigh on you for an entire day. A minor failure can make you feel like your whole world is collapsing. And yet, strangely, just a few weeks later, you look back and wonder, why did I overreact so much? It is time, not advice or analysis, that softens the wound and restores your clarity. We suffer not just because of what happens, but because of how we magnify it when it's still too close. When a problem's face is pressed against your eyes, you can't see anything else. But when you step back, when time passes, when emotions settle, you begin to see the full picture. And suddenly, what felt monumental yesterday becomes nothing more than a comma in the story of your life. The Stoics always saw time as a silent teacher. It doesn't speak, it doesn't argue, but it always leads you to a clearer view. Because until you are calm, you cannot tell what truly matters from what is just a passing wave. But when you let time clear the emotional dust, you begin to see which wounds need healing and which are just temporary scrapes. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And it's true. How many nights have you lost sleep over tragedies that never actually happened? How many times have you overreacted to something that, just 3 days later, felt irrelevant? Time thinking, the ability to see things from a longer distance, is one of the most effective tools for emotional control. It doesn't erase difficulty, but it reduces it to its actual size. It doesn't deny the issue, but it helps you sort through it. What needs solving now, what can untangle with time, and what simply isn't worth the cost of your peace. When someone hurts you, instead of reacting immediately, ask yourself, will this still hurt me a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? Will I even remember this? The answer won't always be no, but it will force you to take a step back. And that step, both in time and awareness, is how you regain control. Those without a long view are the quickest to react, because they live in a constant state of urgency. Everything seems critical, must be resolved now, cannot wait. But in truth, most of the things that once robbed you of sleep now feel trivial. That doesn't mean you're numb, it means you've grown. You've gained the ability to see things as they are, not as your emotions once made them appear. Time also heals wounded expectations. It makes forgiveness possible when anger makes it feel impossible. But after some distance, when the moment no longer holds you hostage, you can look at others with less pain, and forgiveness becomes not a surrender, but a release. Time thinking doesn't ask you to wait passively. It teaches you to step back intentionally before moving forward. When you can say, "I'm not clear right now, but I will be in a few days," you are refusing to let impulse write actions you'll regret later. Time is the fairest judge. It shows you what is worth remembering and what is meant to be released. It doesn't shout like anger, it doesn't persuade like fear, but it stays quietly present, witnessing you grow past the things that once wounded you. And then one day, you look back at what once troubled you, and you smile. Not because it never hurt, but because it no longer controls you. That's when you know you've learned something important. Very few things are truly worth losing your calm over, And most things, if you are patient enough, will pass. I used to react to every little thing. A tactless comment could ruin my entire day. A last-minute change of plans made me feel disrespected. I lived in a constant state of defense, always ready to strike back. And over time, it wasn't the big things that wore me down, but the way I let small things take control of my emotions. Until I realized it wasn't others making me insecure, it was me not being steady enough to remain unmoved by them. Ever since discovering Stoic philosophy, I began training myself to pause, not to react immediately, not to let emotions steer me before reason has had its say. I still feel hurt, angry, disappointed like anyone else. But instead of being consumed, I've learned to watch those feelings pass like wind, like clouds. And something strange happened. I no longer needed to prove anything, because my calm began to speak for me. If what you've just heard made you pause, look inward and start wanting to live more deeply, more slowly and more intentionally, then that is already the first step toward transformation. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next content. And remember, strength doesn't come from never being tested, but from never letting the test distort who you are within. I'll see you in the next video.